The company responsible for building the HS2 high-speed rail line linking London to Birmingham is moving on to the construction phase. It's the biggest single infrastructure project in Europe. Ministers insist the project will boost economic growth with the creation of 22,000 jobs, but critics say it's too expensive and harmful to the environment. Theo Leggett reports.
This is a highly symbolic moment for HS2. After years of planning and development, not to mention delays and rising costs, construction on the 140-mile route from London to Birmingham can officially begin. In fact, a great deal of work demolishing buildings, clearing sites and preparing the route has already been carried out. This is where Birmingham's new Curzon Street station will be built. In a few years' time, it should look like this. The first phase of HS2 will require 32 miles of new tunnels. There will be 110 embankments, 70 cuttings and 150 bridges. And all of this will require 1 million tonnes of steel. The company in charge of the project, HS2 Limited, says some 22,000 new jobs will be created over the next 2 years, including 2,000 apprenticeships. But opponents of the scheme, which remains highly controversial, say they aren't impressed.
From their own figures, it showed that there's going to be over 19,000 jobs that are being displaced purely or got rid of purely because HS2 is displacing or shutting down the businesses that had those jobs. So these 22,000 jobs sounds great, but when you compare it to the number of jobs that are going because HS2 is built, it's a drop in the ocean.
The first part of HS2 alone is expected to cost at least £35 billion. A second phase, extending the line to Manchester and Leeds, is expected to take the total bill to more than £100 billion. The government says it'll fire up economic growth and provide opportunities across the country. But critics say the money could be better spent on improving existing transport links. Theo Leggett, BBC News.
Well, as you heard in that report, the project is, of course, controversial. Joe Rukin is the campaign manager for Stop HS2. Is it not worth now pausing and thinking, actually, the work is starting? You've really lost this part of the campaign, haven't you?
No, there's hundreds of people camped out in woods, in habitats right now. There's a big rally taking place in Parliament Square with Extinction Rebellion, and these people are protecting these woodlands as we speak every day, living in secure family units up and down in camps along the route. There's one just been set up at Euston where they're trying to protect trees from the onslaught of just a temporary taxi rank. And HS2 has been designed to be the most environmentally destructive project this century, and it is simply not good enough to be going ahead with this thing because the case for HS2 was always dodgy. COVID-19 has made it non-existent because HS2 depends on thousands of people clamouring to commute more and more. The business case requires 100,000 new journeys per day. They say it's to get cars off the road. No, it's about creating new journeys. And no one wants to commute. People have realised over the last 6 months, hang on, I don't actually have to commute. I don't have to spend 3 hours a day on this soulless slog in and out of the office. I can work from home.
Well, that might be obviously the case for many with the current health situation, but hopefully that's not going to last forever. There are lots of benefits, of course, to businesses having people together, and fundamentally this is about rebalancing the economy, isn't it? And linking London, the Midlands and the North. We know about the wealth gaps across the UK.
It's about exasperating them. See, this is the problem with HS2. The government make all these statements and people just swallow it, and every single piece of international evidence say HS2 will drag more economic activity to London. That's what all the evidence internationally says. It's also what the evidence of our own hub and spoke transport system shows.
But isn't the point that if you can live outside London and work here, if that is what people choose to do, because there's still a lot of business and industry still focused in the capital, then that is good because it allows wealth to travel further across the country.
Well, no, that's exactly the opposite of the argument you just put. You can't have it both ways, I'm afraid.
There are lots of different arguments for HS2, aren't there, in terms of the potential benefits?
There's lots of spurious arguments for HS2, and the idea that it's going to be this magic wand to cure the north-south divide is completely made up. What you will see is you'll see a bit of development around the stations, but that will be at the expense of the wider region. HS2 is being lobbied for by the people who want to make money out of it, not just building it, but the land grab around the stations, and that's what all this bluster is about. But the idea that this thing is needed now, at a time at which it has become absolutely obvious, and we've been saying this for 10 years, that demand for travel to work is going to decrease, and it's going to be a boon for our small towns that are actually doing so. You know, we've seen the high street decline over the last 10-20 years in small towns because all those commuters have been going into the big cities and spending their money there. Now they're spending that money in the towns where they actually live. So this idea that HS2 is needed for the economy, it's just wrong. The idea that these 20,000 jobs, you know, in the clip, Penny Gaines pointed out that there's 19,590 jobs displaced. But as a job creation scheme, if we take the government's low estimate of phase 1 of 40 billion quid, 22,000 jobs, that works out at almost £2 million to create one single job, at a time at which businesses are going under for the simple fact, for far, far less than that, jobs are being lost for a fraction of what's being wasted on HS2. And it is simply too great an environmental cost.